I decided I needed another table in my poker database, so I've gone ahead and put a link up to InterestingHands.zip. Go ahead and click on that to download it. And then in your Downloads folder, right-click on InterestingHands.zip and extract all. And you'll have an Interesting Hands folder. And I'm going to right-click on this and edit it with Notepad. And what I have here is a list of all of the interesting hands. So what's an interesting hand? Well, it turns out that some draws are never the right thing to do. So for example, if you have a pair of sevens, it's always better to draw 3 cards to a pair of sevens than it is to keep a kicker, even if it's a high card like a king or a jack. So 7-7 jack is not an interesting hand because it's never the right thing to do. And if you go in and you figure out all of the hands that could possibly ever be the best thing to do and list them out, this is what you get. So turns out there's only 3,200 and some odd hands that are ever the right thing to do. And all the other hands, and there were 150,000 of them, all of the other hands are either not as good as something else in the list that will also be present in a draw, or worse than just throwing everything away. So I've stripped all those hands out, the bad hands, and then for all the interesting hands I've gone ahead and named them. So for example, 4, 7, 8 suited is 3 to a straight flush with 2 gaps. So 5 is a gap and 6 is a gap. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is also 3 to a straight flush with 2 gaps. And so I've gone ahead, characterized each of the hands from 3 to a straight flush with 2 gaps all the way up to royal flush, pat, 5 cards, no draw, which is the best possible hand. So let's go ahead and import this. And I'm going to go to my browser, and what I want to do is create a new table, but I want to use the same primary key, the grouped hand primary key that I used in draw values, so that I can join them together. So I'm going to right click on draw values. I'm under database, right click, draw values, open in a new tab, and then I'm going to look at the structure here. So I see that grouped hand is type varchar 25, and I want to make sure that I use exactly the same type here. So I'm going to start under structure for the database by creating a new table, and I'll call that Interesting Hands, and we'll have 2 columns. And the first column is going to be named grouped hand, and that is going to be varchar 25. And then it's also going to have a name column, which is going to be varchar, and I counted, and the biggest one is about 60 characters, so I'm going to use 100 characters here. Save. So that's the structure for the Interesting Hands table. Now we're ready to import some data into it. And this is a much smaller file than the draw values file was, but it still takes quite a while to import it through phpMyAdmin. So I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, which is go to the SQL tab. And back under lecture videos, here was the query I used to import draw values. I'm going to copy that. And I did make one change here. I was having trouble with the lines terminated by \n. On Windows, you really need \r/n sometimes, and I do for this file. So I went ahead and corrected that. On Mac, you probably just need \n. On Linux, you probably just need \n. So here's my SQL command. I'm going to paste, and this query is on Interesting Hands. So I have to change the path to point to my Interesting Hands file. So that's the InterestingHands.csv file. And then I'm going to import into the table Interesting Hands that I just created and hit go. Okay, so it only took a second. It took several minutes when you do it through phpMyAdmin though. So I'm going to go ahead and browse this thing, and here's all my interesting hands. sort by name. So everything from ace jack suited down to 2-pair, alphabetically anyway. So I want to make one more change. Now that I've imported all the data, I'm going to go ahead and make grouped hand be the primary key. And that should be it for this database.